often do you get sourdough stuck in your throat?
Honestly, so I just
This girl does love bread.
I know, and I had to be specific about the sourdough because that morning I was in a rush. Naturally, I was running late, so I had cut the bread but didn't toast it, and I don't like it. It wasn't fresh sourdough. It was like 2 days, so you need to toast that, or it's tough. So I'm like chewing away, like I should have toasted that or something. Because I was just getting it in, and anyway, but I forgot about that moment. I obviously went to training and was just training as normal. Really, it was just a run session. It was nothing too hectic. Were you there?
I was in Glasgow.
Yeah. It was a top-up session. It wasn't even a full squad session. And yeah, I finished the session. I was like, oh, neck's a wee bit sore. And then went back kind of to the gym, was meant to do a training session, and then said to the physio, I was like, my neck, throat, I couldn't really put a finger on it. I was like, I think it's my throat, but it's kind of my neck. Anyway, my physio starts giving me like essentially like soft tissue, like digging into my neck, and I was like, I just don't think that's it. I don't know. And I think she's pretty good at telling when something is wrong, like as in I am easily the most dramatic person about really little things, but when things are serious, I would like to say I tone down the drama.
You will play, like, in all fairness, Wass has played through more things than anyone I know, probably. Like the first couple of years I knew her, you had barely a shoulder attached, and she was playing every minute for Scotland and like throwing herself around. And
when
then
she cuts her finger on the bit of paper,
you
know about it.
Oh my gosh, you know. So
she spends all the drama there on the on the peripheral things.
But talking about or complaining about anything serious in her life doesn't happen. So yeah.
So I think she got the gist. She was like, you seem worried. Anyway, there was nothing. Like my heart rate was good. Everything about me seemed healthy. They couldn't put a finger on it. So I went home and they said, kind of take a few hours, chill out, have some painkillers. And I was happy with that because I was like, there was nothing, I didn't have a clue what was wrong with me. And then later on I'd spoke to the doctor and she was like, talk me through your whole day. I obviously mentioned about the morning I had with sourdough before training. She was like, and she just went, do you think something could be stuck in your throat? And because I was so confused about how this all came on, it didn't feel like a cold. I didn't know. And I was like, you know what? I think that could be it. I think there's a bit of sourdough that is lodged into my throat.
It was old. I didn't toast it.
No,
sounds like honestly, the dog ate my homework.
No, and then it almost felt like a relief because I was like, oh, it all makes sense now. Like, because I was panicking because I was like, this pain has come out of nowhere. And she was like, have some fizzy juice to unlodge it because that can sometimes work. If you've got a bit of food stuck in your throat, if you have fizzy juice, it can move it, hopefully. So I go to the shop, 4 cans of fizzy juice, and I am just seeing them off. Like
a Coke or something?
Oh, there was a Coke,
fizzy juice
there was an Iron Brew.
Right.
Classic. Got to be an Iron Brew in there.
It has to be. There was a wee apple ties in there. And after I was like, I've just got an incredibly sore stomach. And my throat is still sore. And then I was like, oh, and she was like you might need to go to A&E because they can like remove it. And in my head, I wasn't stressed. I didn't tell anyone. I was kind of like, fuck this, I'm going. Like, as in, I just got in the car, didn't tell anyone, and went to A&E. Go to A&E, and I go in, and I'm like, I think I've got something stuck in my throat. And they're like, all right, take a seat. It's a Friday night. So I get there at like 6 o'clock. And I'm sitting there, an hour goes by, and then they eventually like almost register me. And I think, like, for me anyway, that was the first time I'd been in a hospital since obviously my mum had passed. So like all of a sudden things got incredibly scary. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing in here? Like, and I'm all by myself, and it was overwhelming. And then another hour goes by, my neck feels like it's almost closing up, and I'm just crying, lying. And I'm like, I should probably tell someone I'm here. Anyway, Lisa Thompson then messages me I honestly believe it was something like, can I post this on Instagram? And I was just like, Lisa, I can't do this right now. I'm in hospital, but I'm in A&E. And she was like, what? Like, who are you with? And I said, no one. She was in Hawick at the time, so she wasn't about, but she was like, I'm sending Rona. Rona was the only one in Edinburgh at this time. And I'm like, it's fine. Like, I'm away to get taken. Don't stress. And she's like, no. So Rona makes her way to the hospital. And then eventually I kind of get seen. I'm quite distressed at this point. Obviously, I'm in pain. I'm confused. I'm like, this sourdough's really taking a turn for the worst. And then Rona messages me being like, I'm here. And I'm like, no, you're not. And she's sitting in the children's hospital. That actually describes her to a T. And then I'm like, no, you're not here. Anyway, she eventually gets there. And you know what? In that moment, she was just the exact person, like, you know what? I don't know if she was the exact person. We get into...
I'm like, no, I think I'd have done a good job, you know.
You would have been... You were the exact... But she definitely made it feel a little bit less scary. She's like, everything's going to be okay. Like, I was lying on a bed, obviously, in a bay in A&E. And Friday night A&E, it's
chaos.
Yeah.
Place to be, yeah.
Anyway, a long night ahead. Go get a scan on my throat because there's something in my throat. Back to the bay, wait a long time. Then they're like, we need to get another scan of your chest. And that's when I'm like, why? Like, what's wrong with my chest? And they're like, we can see something. We've got your throat, but we can see something just at the bottom of your neck. So it's in your chest. And I was like, what? Like, the bread?
No, you're like, no, I can feel it here. It's not in my chest.
In my stomach, or
I'm like,
it's way in there.
I am confused. And then that's when you're like the cogs obviously are starting to turn. I'm like, something's not right. And I knew something wasn't right. I was in a lot of pain. And anyway, scan back, and then it's quite late at night now. And he's like, you're going to have to stay in overnight. We can see a mass in your chest. So in my head, like, again, I'm pretty drugged up, and I'm just like, what is that? I didn't ask many questions. We'd kind of been told it could be, they didn't know what it was, but it could be like an abscess, which is essentially an infection, and it could be treated quite easily. It could be more serious, but we just don't know. But there is a mass there. So a mass didn't mean a huge amount to me at that time. But anyway, I get taken up, wheeled up in a bed to what was the high dependency
cardiothoracic.
That's it, cardiothoracic. Jeez. I didn't even realise kind of where I was at the time, but you go in, there's beeps everywhere, you're getting wired up, I'm on ECG, all the rest of it. Then Rona's still with me, bless her, it's like 3 a.m, and she's like, so like what is it? And it's what like could there be antibiotics or whatever she could take? And they're like, oh, it's a tumour. Like that,
so they knew but hadn't actually said it.
Just hadn't said that word.
Yeah,
Right,
they
okay.
said mass.
So to them a mass probably means that, but to us,
So a bit, and also once you're up in that ward, like they're dealing with serious stuff day in, day out. Like they're not gonna, there's no mollycoddling you. Like it is very much like, oh, she's got a tumour, but you don't need emergency surgery. And in my head I'm like, surgery? Sorry, what? You won't need emergency surgery, you'll probably get after the weekend. And I'm like, what? Like,
I'm going to South Africa.
What are you on about? We've got 2 big tests coming up.
You were like, I was just drinking physical drink.
No, it honestly escalated that much. And well, I mean, and so obviously there's me and Rona in this room. No one else really has an awareness. And we're not like, at that moment, I'm like, I need an adult. Like I need an adult. Like they were like, and obviously it was the time they're like, have you got, like, what's your next of kin? I'm obviously in a very vulnerable situation, and Rona's like, I'm her next of kin. I was like, God, that's my soul. Oh no, and they were like,
I changed my name to that on the form pretty quickly.
Rachel got in the next
got
stage,
involved,
like,
and I was
"Spot
like,
my
take
number."
that name off. Yeah. I love her dearly.
But yeah, and then that the next 3 days were pretty brutal. It was over the weekend. Not much happens in hospital over the weekends. But I was obviously had visitors every second of the day. But I swole up, shall we say, my my neck and my chest kind of swelled. There was
one like point where it went from like me and my mum had come in and like first thing the next morning, and like she was swole, but she wasn't like, you weren't like, oh my goodness, and like you'd fallen asleep, I think, and mum was like, I'll leave you to it. And so she went away for a couple hours, and I remember she just walked back in like a couple hours later, and she just looked at me and went and I like hadn't really looked at her, and suddenly her neck just like come out here, and like you were really struggling to speak, you were like struggling to like
I completely lost my voice, which was really weird, but
which is lovely.
That sounds like a nightmare.
First time ever.
Genuinely my living nightmare.
No.
Couldn't think of anything worse.
And you know what, there was moments in that time I'm like, what if I've lost my voice forever? It's my identity. But it like that period of time when it was really scary in terms of how I looked, how I felt, was actually short. And the reason I had that reaction was it wasn't the tumour that caused that reaction. Essentially, there had been a bleed, like a blood vessel had burst randomly, spontaneously, and bled into the tumour, which caused the reaction. So it wasn't the tumour that made me ill, if that makes any sense. I've been living with it for a long time. But it was the burst blood vessel that caused the reaction, which allowed us to discover it.
Because since all of this, they think you might have had it your whole life. Is that right?
Yeah. So they believe the medical term for it is a teratoma. So it's a type of tumour that is, I mean, it can be cancerous, but it was luckily benign, but it's very rare to have one in your chest. But yeah, they believe it. I've had it since potentially birth, and it's just grown with me. But it's grown to a sizable thing. And it was actually, albeit it wasn't obviously causing me a whole lot of distress. I've been able to play rugby, do everything I've needed to, not knowing about it, but it was compressing one of my main veins back to my heart. God, I don't know much about the body,
wow.
But it would explain some of my breathing issues in running drills.
I googled this tumour because you told me to, and it can grow its own teeth, hair, pancreas.
Sorry, no, what?
That's true, right?
Yeah, so included in the teratoma, they can consist of like teeth, hair.
It's its own like thing.
Yeah. But mine didn't have any teeth. Did have some hair. Had pancreas in it. It had cartilage in it.
You could have put that in your blinking knee when it was
a transplant. If you could just get some of that down there.
That's very sci-fi. This is like, sorry, what?
It's mental. But yeah, the size of it. So in terms of full length, 27 centimetres. The top bit very thin, but like
27 centimetres is nearly like a ruler. That's
how
we all measure things, obviously, from school.
The bulk of it was
a fist.
The size of a fist?
Bigger than a fist, I would say. It was a chunky old thing.
And what I think to be going through so shortly after you lost your mum, without having that person by your side who knows your entire medical history and has been there for every step of the way. It's in times like, I think especially, I was chatting to my sister about this, like when she had her baby, she was like, it's literally that you have a few moments in your life where you're like, I just want my mom here. And I had so much pain in my heart for the fact that you went through this after you lost your mum. But then seeing the way that Dr. Rachel Malcolm and your next of kin Rona and the rest of your friends have just rallied is the most heartwarming thing on earth.
It is hard one, because when you're that vulnerable, like when I was that ill, I was terrified to tell my brother, because you know the people, like my mum would have been, obviously that's who I wanted there, but also it's so hard for someone that you love to see you in such a vulnerable state. And I think anyone that knows me, or like I've always kind of been the strong one, like always. I would always be the one. I like a bit of fixer. I don't like to be vulnerable. I'm fine. I'm all fine. And I was even like that, like with mum. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm fine. I don't need any help. But in that moment, like I was, just incredibly vulnerable. But the way, I mean, Rachel and when Rachel and her mum walked in, Rachel's mum was essentially the mum I needed in that moment, and she was absolutely that. And of course, she can't replace my mum, but the love I felt from people was, God, it was almost overwhelming. Like it's scary to think that I never want to have to go through a moment like that, but I don't think I'll ever realise how much people care and want to look after you, and that's my friends, that's my teammates, that's their families, and almost in a weird way, I'm so I'm grateful that I can see that in all the people around me, how much love there is.